Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Meryl. I'm Chief of Staff at Fund Her. We've just opened up the meeting and we're going to let attendees kind of join for the next minute, and then we'll kick things off. If you did just join, please put yourself on mute so that we avoid any background noise. Thank you. Hi, if you're just joining, we're just giving attendees a minute or two more to join. If you have just joined, you can check the chat. We're kind of all introducing ourselves and adding where we're dialing in from. All right. Well, I think it's about that time to get started. So I'm Meryl. Again, I'm Chief of Staff here at Fund Her. You probably all recognize me from emails the past couple of weeks. I'm joining virtually from Mount Baldy today, which is one of my favorite outdoor spaces in Southern California. So I'm dialing in from LA. From the Fund Her side, we also have Val McGinty, who's our founder, and Sam Helton, our Chief Political Strategist. So hello to both. And before we get started, I just wanted to speak for a couple of minutes about why we're gathering today and what we're working toward. So as you probably know, Fund Her is a PAC committed to putting progressive women at the helm of state and local government. Since our inception in 2017, we've helped elect 37 women in 5 states. And as a result of our work and many groups doing similar work, the California legislature is now at a record high of 32.5% women, which is awesome, but we're also on a mission to reach 50% by 2028. Today, though, we're actually focused on another part of our mission, which is to advance progressive policies related to our 4 cornerstone values. So those are women's equality, reproductive freedom, social justice, and of course, climate responsibility. And today's event actually follows up on a virtual panel that we hosted back in September that unpacked how having women at the table, especially women of color, is absolutely paramount when it comes to making policy and decisions around climate change and putting us on a path to climate justice. That event, some of you, I believe, joined, that was called Women Leading Intersectional Climate Action. We had the Lieutenant Governor of California, Eleni Kounalakis, with us. We heard from Congresswoman Nikema Williams from Georgia. And I'll drop that YouTube link into the chat if you missed it or if you want to watch it again. But the point is, we were very inspired by that program, and in alignment with our belief in the power of local and state government, we thought, how can we organize our Fund Her community to advocate at the local level for these values? There's so much opportunity to make change within a city or a county, and I'm so excited to hear, some of these success stories to prove that. We're going to hear from Adelita Serena from the Sierra Club. We're going to hear from Hayward City Councilmember Angela Andrews, Mayor of Encinitas Catherine Blakespear, and Executive Director of Save the Bay, David Lewis. We're also going to hear how easy local advocacy is from Savina Takar, Fund Her's Legislative Counsel, and Sabrina Ashtian, who works with the Berkeley Environmental Law Clinic. A couple of housekeeping notes, and then we'll get the program going. Please feel free to chime in with questions. It's easiest if you type them into the chat. That allows us to kind of flow through, and then we can address questions and comments at the end. We definitely want this to be interactive. We want you to walk away with the information that you need to really have an action plan. Obviously we want to be inspired, but we want to really get work done as well. So don't be shy. We've got a lot of expertise on the phone, and we want you all to use it. Please keep yourself on mute unless you are speaking or presenting. We do encourage you all to stay on video if that's comfortable for you. Fund Her is all about building community, and so we love to see your faces. Just final note that this meeting is being recorded, and I will follow up with everyone with the link for that so that you can make it part of your action plan to share this great information with your own network. So with that, I am going to actually kick it off with some recorded remarks from LA City Council member Nithya Raman. She's actually one of the women that we helped elect to local office through our Build the Bench program. And she could not attend today, but she's an incredible champion for climate in the city of LA. So I'll share that. Sorry, one second.
Everyone, I'm Councilmember Nithya Raman, representing the 4th District in the City of Los Angeles. We all know that climate change is the existential threat of our lifetimes, one that feels often like an insurmountable challenge. But I'm here to tell you that real change, tangible change, is possible. Here in Los Angeles, we are addressing climate change from all angles, from the neighborhood level on up to the city level and to the regional level. We're working on creating a zero-emission municipal fleet, working to retrofit old city buildings, demanding zero-emission shipping corridors, and so much more. I recently co-presented a motion calling on the City of Los Angeles to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030 with no offsets as part of the Cool Cities Challenge. Achieving carbon neutrality by 2030 is bold, but I know that all of us who call Los Angeles home are ready to work arm in arm with our neighbors to make this goal a reality. We have wasted years debating climate policy while our planet has steadily warmed to the existential moment that we face today. We no longer have time to waste. I hope that today's event inspires you to start organizing around climate change, and that one day soon we'll be able to look back together and say that the change that we had made happened because all of us came together and worked on it with the urgency that it deserves. Thank you.
She is incredible. Sorry for the delay in getting that shared. I actually want to quickly put in the chat a press release about what she mentioned, her resolution about zero emission ports. I thought that was really interesting. So now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Adelita Serena, who is the Community Engagement Coordinator for the LA and San Francisco Bay chapters of the Sierra Club. And she's got a great story to tell about her success advocating for local action on climate in Yolo County. So Adelita, welcome.
Thank you for having me, and just so honored to be here. Again, my name is Adelita Serena. I wear many hats. You know, I am the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Sierra Club, but I'm also an organizer with Mothers Out Front. And one of the most important roles I play is a mother. Mother of 2 teenage boys, and it is why I do what I do. It's why I organize and, you know, advocate for change at the local level. And just want to also mention, I am zooming in from Patwin territory, traditional lands of the Patwin people, and now the Yochodihiwintu Nation. So just want to acknowledge that, and hopefully all the tribal lands in which you are all residing on. As Meryl mentioned, I was one of the residents that organized around and successfully had the climate emergency resolution passed here in Yolo County. It was a resolution we submitted right before the shutdown, believe it or not. So it was the last live in-person meeting that took place and the day after everything shut down. And so we submitted our resolution. It did not pass then, but what the Yolo County Board of Supervisors told us was, you know, go back to the drawing board. We want it in a place where we can vote to pass this. And so what we did after the shutdown, it actually gave us time to meet with each supervisor one-on-one and find out what it would take to get it passed. And so, as mentioned, these residents, myself included, was representatives from different parts of the county. And we continued to organize, and we formed what is now called the YOLO Climate Emergency Coalition. And we met with each supervisor, took notes, went to the drawing board, reformulated our resolution, and got it to a place where it passed 4 out of 5. And that was in September 29th, 2020. So it passed 4-5, and the one supervisor that did not vote to support it ended up getting voted out of his seat and was replaced with another supervisor, Angel Baraja, supervisor of District 5. And after it passed, we recommended to the Board of Supervisors that they form an advisory body, a commission. And we gave them a set of recommendations, what the commission should look like, and what it would take to really have success around representation. And we recommended that they put some budget into this commission so that if folks wanted to apply to be a commissioner, and if that it meant taking time away from their work, that they could put forth stipends for a commission seat so that it could be equally represented by all areas of the county. And so that is something that they're currently really working towards. We advocated that they reach towards the APR funds that just came through to continue to fund this commission. And that's something that they did. We submitted some projects to receive funding through the American Rescue Plan funding. I'm sorry, I should have said that. ARP is American Rescue Plan. And so we submitted projects as our coalition to have some of the funding go towards climate projects. And so again, the resolution passed, we submitted the recommendations, and so they put forth the announcement that they were looking to fill these commission seats that would guide the process around implementing the climate emergency resolution. So this has happened, and this happened again. You know, the timeline is the shutdown happened. We went back to the drawing board. September 29th, the resolution passed, and they just recently formed the commission that will be driving the implementation process. And I am one of the commissioners that was appointed. And so I am the commissioner for District 5 that sits to be driving this climate emergency implementation. So now I sit out as a commissioner to decide how funding will be allocated to implement areas of the community around Yolo County that desperately need infrastructure change. And so share that process. Now that I am a commissioner, I'm able to appoint, as the commission, we're able to appoint 3 additional commissioners. So that the Board of Supervisors do not get to decide that. We, the commission, get to decide that. So now we're able to decide who else gets to sit at the table with us. And so that is something that we have done. I feel very proud to say all of that. And the resolution states that we will be going carbon negative by 2030. And so that is ambitious, but I know we can do it. We will be assessing, ecological impacts around the county and how we could change some of our infrastructure. We will continue to seek funding at the state and federal level. And so we're very excited to be at the point where we are now, and really, really drive this process and hopefully be a leader around, for neighboring counties to follow. We are in an agricultural area, so this is the very first agricultural county to declare a climate emergency. And we're hoping other agricultural counties will follow. And hopefully, the state will also, take the next step. We all know that the governor just, decided or, took executive action to create a buffer zone for sensitive sites. That's something that we didn't have in California. That just happened last week, just a few days ago, it feels like. So that's also something that I'm a part. I know that activists like myself have been pressuring the governor to do so. So I just wanted to put that on everybody's radar. CalGEM just put out a rule that would assess, sensitive sites, no more drilling around neighbors, schools, and workplaces. So California, we can do it. I know at the local level, at the state level, and California is a leader. We're all leaders and we can do this, but it really does require, funding to make sure all voices are represented and really take into account these individuals from different parts of our community and the wisdom that they bring to the table. So just happy to share my experience. Please, feel free to put any questions in the chat about how we were able to achieve this. I'm very grateful for our County Board of Supervisors that have taken our lead and will be following through. So thank you very much, Meryl, for inviting me here and the Fund Her project. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Adelita. That's so inspiring and exactly the kind of bold, proactive action that we need. I love hearing that it's, an agricultural area as well. I know that's high on my personal list of worries and concerns when it comes to the future. Well, next up, we're going to get into kind of the nitty gritty of how to be an effective advocate like Adelita for climate action. So I'm delighted to bring up Savina and Sabrina to share their wonderful presentation on kind of Advocacy 101. So welcome both.
Thanks, Meryl.
Yeah, and I will tee up your presentation. One moment.
Great. Well, thanks everyone again for being here today. We have a very brief but informative presentation today on how to be an effective advocate. Hit the next slide, please. So what is an advocate? I know that's a very charged word, but what it really is just promoting or supporting a cause or policy that you're passionate about. And it can be at any level. I know we're today talking about the local level, but it's really just advocating for what you believe in and trying to make change. So finding your voice, sharing it with those that have the decision-making authority and trying to make change. And while it may seem like, you just feel like an average everyday citizen, you have a very, very powerful role in your community, especially as a constituent. You're a voter, you're someone who put these elected officials into office. So they're always interested in hearing, what do the voters want? So whether or not they're asking, you're going to go and tell them. So that's what's so powerful about this position. They want to hear from you. Their staff wants to hear from you. They want to know what's going to, help their communities run better. Next slide, please. The first step is getting in the door, or the virtual door, the Zoom room. So the scheduling a meeting, and schedulers are really the gatekeepers. They have such an important function. So please do not overlook them. When you reach out to a scheduler, the more organized you are, the more likely you are to get a meeting. So try to, have your availability ready, offer that up to them, give them your name, your contact, make sure you include any organization you're working with so they know that this meeting is happening on a bigger level. Like, as I mentioned before, mention if you're a constituent, that often brings your meeting request to the top of the list. And be specific. If there's a meeting, something you want to discuss, whatever your change and your ask is, include that in the meeting. We've actually found that it's almost easier to get these meetings now that we've got Zoom available to us. Whereas some officials used to have, Fridays only open for constituents or only Fridays in the district. Now they're open all the time because they're at their homes, they're available, there's flexibility, and they can reach you whether you're, in that area, regardless of traffic. So I think it's helpful if you're willing to do Zoom. If you're comfortable with in person, always give that option available too. But there really is power now in the pandemic to get access to local officials. Next slide, please. So the do's and don'ts. I have just one slide for don'ts. We'll keep it really simple. Fund her, we're big advocates for fundraising, of course. It's powers in fundraising, but keep finances separate from your ask. So don't mix your fundraising with your ask for action. Try to stay on topic in your meetings about you, why you're there, and your ask. And the only other don't is be really respectful of the official's time. You want to make sure that you're on time or early for your meetings, that you're organized and prepared. Next slide. The do's are the more fun. So engage. You want to tell them about yourself. You want them to remember the meeting. You want to be a person. So as much as you're there to talk about, what your change is, you want to explain who you are and why that change is important to you, why you're involved, what inspires you, your ties to the community. Sometimes it helps to do some Googling, thank God for the internet, but you can learn more about the official that you're meeting with and see what similarities you have and try to relate to them. And I know this is the third time I'm saying this, but please make sure you tell them in your meeting that you're a constituent. Whether you put it in the meeting request already or you think that they know, just say it at the outset because it's very, very important for them to hear that, you're a voter and you voted for them. Next slide, please. So team meetings are extremely powerful, especially in Zoom. As I mentioned, you get the ability to have more people on a meeting together, and it can be a really powerful tool in having more faces and more voices behind your cause. So some of the key things to do for team meetings are to choose a leader or leaders. If you can, do a pre-meeting to set who's going to speak about what, maybe so-and-so does introductions, so-and-so does a policy, and then, other folks are going to give examples or explain, what's happening in the area specifically. So you want to try to divide up those responsibilities to keep the meeting flowing, to make sure everyone has time to talk, and then to also show that you've got many voices in the community supporting a certain cause or call for action. Next slide. And this do is extremely important. I know a lot of us get in our own heads and we want to explain what we're asking for. But the other side of this, and I think, the last speaker mentioned it too, is listening, is that, you want to hear where the official is at. You want to hear what they think. Are they receptive to what you're asking for? Is there a little tweak you can make to get them on board? You want to probe, ask questions. Sometimes you get a lot of nodding and you don't really get too much responses, but you can ask, take a pause on what you're speaking about and say, what are your thoughts on this? Have you supported an action like this in the past? So do definitely feel comfortable asking those questions if you're not getting the feedback. And if they do share concerns, don't feel that you have to respond in the meeting. If you don't know the answer, you can always reach out to the experts for follow-up. Next slide, please. Lastly, thank them. So whether you're in a meeting with the official themselves or their staff are very, very influential. So you want to thank them for their time. Make sure you send follow-up or any leave behinds or materials when they're going through and, rehashing the meeting and thinking about the asks they have, whatever your materials are behind them. You can also send thank yous to keep up the relationship, to follow up, to say, thank you so-and-so for meeting with me. Reminder, we spoke about this issue. I'm looking forward to X action. So it's an important tool for not only showing your appreciation of their time, but also working in that follow-up. And then reporting back is a very important tool for organizations. Like, let's say you're working with Sierra Club, for example, on trying to get, some local action. You want to tell Sierra Club how that meeting went. You want to let them know where the official was at. So you can not only try to get some feedback and some materials on how to help persuade them, but also so Sierra Club can know, where people are at in the specific area. Next slide. I'll pass it off to Sabrina to talk about specifically what local climate actions you can take.
Thank you so much, Sabina, for that terrific 101 presentation. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for being here to advocate for protecting our environment. My name is Sabrina Ashton, and I am an environmental law clinic instructor at UC Berkeley, as well as the California State Director for the Humane Society of the United States and an advisory board member for Fund Her. Legislative advocacy and environmental justice are my biggest passion, so I am thrilled to be here with you to discuss the intersection of those now. And I just want to take a few minutes to talk with you about climate action advocacy that you can take and how to participate at a local level. And as everybody has mentioned, please feel free to put questions in the chat, and we're going to answer them later. And then always happy to talk with you offline about this. So here are some easy ways that you can really make a difference with our climate crisis. The first is to calculate your carbon footprint and reduce your emissions. There are so many tools out there now to do this. The one that I like and use to pitch Berkeley is UC Berkeley has a great one called the Cool Climate Calculator, and I will put that in the chat following my presentation. But you can see from that how much carbon you're using, and then tangible steps that you can take to reduce your carbon emissions. There are easy steps like replacing some of your appliances to energy efficient appliances, planting trees, and a variety of things that you can do. The second is reduce your waste, stop using single-use plastics, and reuse items as much as possible. Go meatless, which is one that I don't think that a lot of people think about initially when they think of climate advocacy, but studies show that much of our emissions come from the meat and dairy that we consume. So by reducing your consumption of animal protein by half, you can cut your diet's carbon footprint by more than 40%. So just doing Meatless Monday or being meatless a couple of days a week really makes a difference. The next is vote with your dollars, which can be a variety of things, but opt to shop locally. When you do buy products online, try to click for less packaging. Even with Amazon, you can do that. So there are a variety of ways to cut down on how many shipments you're getting and how much packaging is used in those shipments. And then take action. So write LTEs, that's letters to the editor, to your local newspaper about the issues that you care about, and encourage others in your community to also take action. You can volunteer for campaigns and causes that you care about. You can vote, well, you should vote in every election, paying attention especially to the down ballot races. I think we often get fixated on the federal races, and the speakers today are such a great example of why local elections matter so much. And talk with your representatives, which I will discuss next. Meryl, if you want to go to the next slide. So all of the tips that Savina mentioned are fantastic for also meeting with your local representatives. In your local jurisdiction, you will have a city council member as well as a board of supervisor member, and that is at the county level. So a great way to just get started and figure out the council and the committees are to attend the meetings, especially now that many of them are on Zoom. It is so easy to participate. Learn the language. As Adelita mentioned in her section, she was talking about a resolution. So local governments often pass resolutions, which are non-binding decisions to do something in the community or not do something in the community. And then ordinances, which are local laws, which are enacted by the municipal authority. You also want to learn the committees. Often local governments have various committees that portions of the council sit on, such as an environmental committee in this instance, which would be helpful. Learn the key dates. Often local governments create priority agendas for the coming year. So a January meeting would be a great time to try to get an environmental issue on their priority list at the environmental committee and then in the council itself. And then elevate the voices of the environmentally burdened community members. It's often the most marginalized and vulnerable populations in our communities that end up bearing the brunt of so many of our negative environmental decisions that we've made at the planning level. They're the ones that are nearest to the polluted factories, have less access to green spaces, and so many other burdens. So when you do advocate, please take time to speak up and out for those communities in your area so that we can create sustainable change for all of us. And then if we go on to the next slide, I will give just a couple of ideas that you can use. So cities and counties are developing climate action plans. We heard about that a little bit with Nithya, Councilmember Rahman's comments earlier about the climate action plan to be carbon neutral by 2030. A lot of various cities and counties throughout the state, really all over the world, are working on this. So you can see if your city and county already have a plan and how you can participate and effectuate that plan. And if they don't have a plan, you can see how you can help to draft one. Clean transportation, we also heard about that at the beginning with the council members' comments. There's so much in this space that can be done, from encouraging more EV chargers, adding bike lanes, moving to zero bus emission fleets, and so many more ideas. Vegan options, this is one that we have been working on with the Humane Society, is encouraging cities and counties to offer more vegan options at city and county run facilities. That can be stadiums, office buildings, a variety of places. And so we're doing that as resolutions. Recycling and composting, if you encourage your city and your county to offer more recycling and composting options, either as a resolution or as an ordinance. And I am happy to discuss any more of these offline. Thank you all so much for your advocacy. And I will now turn it over to Meryl to discuss some local success stories.
Thank you, Sabrina. Yeah, so looks like Val has a question, which I think is appropriate to address right now. Do you have any recommendations on which local official to request a meeting with and how to get the schedule or info for that person? Very practical.
Sure. That is a great question. Thank you. So there are easy ways to find out who your city council representative is and who your board of supervisor representative is. If any of you are unfamiliar with who your representatives are, please reach out to me in the chat and I'm happy to show you. And you want to try to reach out as much as possible, as Savina mentioned, with your own council members or your own representatives at the local and state and federal level. Sometimes there could be a reason why you might want to reach out to another council member if you know that that council member is, very interested in environmental protection issues. You might go to that council member prior to going to your own. But as a general rule of thumb, it's always helpful to try to talk to your representative first. So if anybody is unfamiliar with finding out their representative, please let me know and I'm happy to help. Thanks, Val.
Awesome. Thank you, Sabrina. So as you mentioned, I'm going to bring up Angela Andrews. Angela is someone that Fund Her proudly supported in being elected to Hayward City Council, and has some great stories to share herself. So welcome, Angela.
Thanks, Meryl, and thank you, Valerie. And thank you so much for the invitation. And hello, David. We met not too long ago. Wanted to thank you all for inviting me to this panel. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. And I promised my colleague, Elisa Marquez, that I was going to give her a shout out. She's actually a council member that's on the dais, but serves on the sustainability committee. I did invite her to attend. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it. She sends her regards, but I will be talking a lot of the work that she's done prior to me being on council. So I told her I would relay the message of hello. Thank you so much again. I wanted to also just let you know that I actually work in wastewater. So I am the capital portfolio manager for West County Wastewater. And so I'm in charge of infrastructure projects related to sewer replacements, as well as improving our plant processes at a wastewater treatment facility. So I work with I deal with climate action on a daily basis. So I'm very fortunate to have that job. And water is becoming a more and more important topic as of late. And so it's great for me to actually work in that space as well as be on city council and talk about that as well. So I am also a East Bay Dischargers Authority Commissioner. So we talk about climate action in that capacity as well. In all three of these realms that I serve on, we talk about water, but also shoreline protection. And David, actually, when I met David, I asked him, did we do a good job? Are we okay? Did you like our plan? And he gave me the thumbs up that he did like our plan. But we just recently at City of Hayward, recently passed our approval of the Hayward Shoreline Master Plan, but I'll talk about that in a second. In the West County wastewater space, I work on pretty big projects. Right now, we are working on an $80 million project for an energy service company to come in and do a design build project at our wastewater treatment facility. And one of the things we have to do is think about climate action, and we're thinking about living levees and how do we address sea level rise protection. So we are doing that not just in Hayward, but we're actually doing it in Richmond and in West County, Contra Costa area. So that's one of the big projects that I'm working on. I'm also assisting on the Living Levee project, and sea level protection rise is something that is on our brain now. We used to think, oh, that can happen in the future, but I have an aunt who lives in New Orleans, and everything she owned was wiped out by Katrina. She went to Baton Rouge, got flooded out in Baton Rouge. Now she's back in New Orleans as they fix up her house in Baton Rouge. So this is a very real thing for me and my family, and it can happen and it will happen. And what do we need to do right now in order to make changes? And so that's something that we're looking at in Richmond. And then another thing that I'm working on, I actually will be attending a water resilience conference in December in Florida. As you know, Florida is also seeing a lot of sea level rise happening in their area. And so what I'll be doing is going back, looking at lessons learned, looking at building strategies that they're doing in order to adjust to the sea level rise. But it's something that a lot of the agencies are not doing in a silo. They're actually talking to other agencies to figure out this problem. So that's something that I'm doing on my daily. And then with Hayward, I'm very proud to be part of this city. When I started off as a Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force member, and we would do projects across the city for beautification, but not just, oh, we're going to beautify our neighborhood. We were actually putting in native landscaping earlier. I was talking to Sam's on the call. We were talking about how expensive it is to rip out our lawns and put in more native planting. We're doing that in the city, and it's a very expensive endeavor, but we need to look at our lawns and save water and look at what we can do. Those little things we can do, and this task force actually was helping educating the community by putting these gardens in. Another thing that we were doing as part of Keep Hayward Clean and Green, we did a beautiful yard contest. So we were actually rewarding residents who were doing this. They would get a condemnation from the mayor. They would get to meet the mayor. They'll get a gift card to Home Depot, just recognizing their efforts in being part of the solution. Another thing that Hayward has done is that we actually opted all of our residents into a renewable energy option as part of our partnership with East Bay Community Energy. So when they get their PG&E bill, they automatically are part of this plan called Renewable 100. And this was a very controversial resolution for us to move forward on. And we actually brought it back. At first I voted no. Residents, they're upset about their bills. They're upset about the rising cost of their utilities. But I felt it was important to bring back because everyone's always looking for a way to do better. And this is an easy way to do better. And so even though it's always frowned upon to bring back a resolution and, rehear an item, but I felt like this was our one shot. We have one earth, let's try it, let's do it. And the benefit of this plan of opting in everyone is that if a resident has an issue with it, they can opt out. So it's one of those things where you actually do have control over, but most people, once they see, oh, this is going towards renewable energy and it's already done for me, I'm probably going to keep it. So that's one of the things that we've done in the city of Hayward, and that's going to be taking effect in January. Another thing that the city of Hayward has done, our climate action plan is actually pretty aggressive for the city, and I'm very proud of it. And I just want to make sure I have the numbers right with the years and all that. So when I was on Planning Commission, I approved the Hayward greenhouse gas reduction goals, and the city council also approved. But we are doing 20% below 2005 baseline levels emissions by 2020. Then we're going to do 30% in 2025, and then 55%. In 2030, and then our goal is to meet carbon net neutrality by 2045. So we did approve that. So we hope we're really actually ahead of that strategy right now, but we're really hoping to get by 2045 neutrality. So that's a big deal. We also approved moving forward on zero net energy as our goal, and we are our new library, our Hayward 21st Century Library just opened, and it met net neutrality. And then also our wastewater treatment facility also produces energy through our solar panels and our cogeneration projects that we have at the plant process, as part of the plant process. So we are actually creating energy on site. So that's really exciting. There's a lot more things I can go on about how Hayward is pushing the needle on climate action, and residents can be assured that the city of Hayward staff and city council really care about this issue. And we really care about it, particularly because of our location. Hayward Fault, we think about that. And then also our proximity to the shoreline. A lot of our critical infrastructure is across the shoreline. Our wastewater treatment facility, the Russell City Energy Plant, a lot of our critical infrastructure is on the shoreline. So anything we can do with help with climate action, we're going to do. So those are some of the things that I wanted to relate to y'all. I know it's a lot of information, a lot of projects, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'm always available. I'll put my email and phone number in the chat, and feel free to reach out anytime.
Thanks so much, Angela. Just a couple things you're working on. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna welcome now David Lewis, we're going to stay kind of up in the Bay Area. He's executive director of Save the Bay, and he's got a lot of insight from the nonprofit perspective about how to work with local government. So welcome, David.
Yeah, thanks very much for including me. I'm glad to be in the minority with a Zoom screen full of powerful women, and I can be the token white man down in the corner. That's a nice reversal, and welcome, overdue. I have been the executive director of Save the Bay for 23 years. I actually was born and raised in the Bay Area, but then ended up working in Washington, D.C. on some national and international policy issues for about 15 years before moving home to get this great job. And Save the Bay has been around for 60 years, really started the modern, I would say, grassroots environmental advocacy movement here in the Bay Area, trying to stop the Bay from being filled in for development in the 1960s, and then has worked on a series of pollution and development and habitat restoration issues, and now very focused on climate change and sea level rise from a regional perspective. So I think it's there's some examples that I want to share. Not all of them are directly about climate change, but a couple things that are really themes in the examples that I'll mention that I thought would be useful for this audience. That includes elected officials and then local advocates who might become elected officials. So these brief examples, I think, really highlight the benefits of working closely, where possible, with an ally who is part of the city council or county government or other government decision-making body. That's compared with, just participating as an outside individual or outside stakeholder, in some formal process that involves many stakeholders. Those are important too, but I really want to highlight the benefits of working with an ally. And then I think the second theme here is that many of the most effective local elected officials are people who have had experience as outside advocates, whether that was their job or just their civic practice. And many of the most effective outside advocates have experience working for an elected official or inside government where they see how people actually make decisions, which is not necessarily the way we're taught in our civics textbooks or, in the formal ways that we're told decisions are made. So 3 quick examples. One is exactly what we were just hearing about in Hayward. The city of Hayward has a big expanse of open area on the shoreline that could be developed or could be protected for restoration. And now with sea level rise, it also includes some really important infrastructure. So the city government decided to create a longer term climate adaptation plan for that whole shoreline area, to plan now for the sea level rise that's coming. We got involved as an organization, providing some written comments on the draft plan. And there's actually a time when very few stakeholders were getting involved and commenting. The plan had 3 options, and we thought one of them was by far the best. So we got involved in making comments, both through the formal process and also with the city council members and city staff, telling them how to make the best option even better. And we also offered, technical assistance and some expertise to attach to our comments so that we had more credibility. To skip to the end, the outcome is we were very successful at shaping the preferred alternative, and the ultimate decision that they made was to try to restore as much of that open area on the shoreline to tidal marsh that will protect the power plant, the sewage treatment plant, and other things on the shoreline. So that was an example of where we were working through an established stakeholder process and comment process, but we went the extra mile to get involved, and we had a very positive impact. And that is actually going to be a model for other cities in the region to try to emulate. It's a very high standard that Hayward has set. And now we get to invoke that with other adjacent cities and say, you need to do something more like what Hayward has done. The city's really emerged as a real leader. My second example is working a decade ago with the city of San Jose, which was the first city in the state to pass a stringent ban on distribution of free plastic bags at grocery stores at a time when there were very few other examples of that in the state. Without going into the details, I want to emphasize that we found an ally on the city council who really didn't even need to be convinced that this was important. We did a lot of public education, and we helped staff that council member. Turns out that council member was not very effective council member, by virtue of his particular personality or maybe other politics. But we did get him to request that the city staff do a formal study of the benefits of doing this plastic bag ban, the cost savings for their waste processing and other things. And then in the end, we got another city council member who got enthused about this because of the work that we had done. He was a much more effective leader. He mobilized his colleagues, and the outcome is the city passed the toughest bag ban in the state. That became a model for other adjacent cities. We got to 85% of the population in the Bay Area, more than 40 cities, that passed individual bans. And what that did was it changed the politics at the statewide level and made it possible for the state legislature to pass a bill banning plastic bags, free plastic bags throughout the state. That was even challenged by the plastics industry, which tried a referendum to overturn it. And the referendum was unsuccessful. So now we have this ban throughout the state on plastic bags that cause a lot of trash and consume a lot of energy for only waste because of a local organizing project in a key city and finding a great ally. That ally actually later became the mayor of San Jose, and we've worked with him on a lot of other things. And the third example I want to mention is actually stopping a major development project. Years ago, San Francisco Airport wanted to expand their runways further into San Francisco Bay. Would have been huge negative environmental impact. Also, frankly, huge negative economic impact to the airport. They would have gone bankrupt trying to do this. We were participating in the formal processes and commenting, on the environmental impact report and other things. We knew that wasn't really going to have much impact. So instead, we created our own alternative process. We did a teach-in. We kind of created a parallel process that actually attracted more participation than the city's formal process on the airport. And again, we identified an ally on the city board of supervisors. It's also the city and county of San Francisco. We basically served as his adjunct staff. We had 3 people on my team providing him with information. We got him to request economic studies. He had a staff person who was our liaison, but we really offered ourselves as staff to him. And in the end, won't go into the details, we were successful in stopping the project, mostly by exposing how much it was going to cost the city. And we went even farther because we had built this leader. He actually got the airport to formally approve a policy that they will never fill in more of San Francisco Bay. They recognize the environmental benefits of finding other ways to land more planes safely without filling in the bay. So I could offer many, many other examples, but I guess I want to come back to where I started. There's huge benefits of finding, where possible, an ally on the city council or other government body to advocate internally for the change that you're trying to accomplish. And then my second point, that some of the very effective advocates are former government officials who understand how government decisions are made. And some of the most effective government officials are former advocates. I would say, we've heard some examples of that already just from the speakers on this call, in particular, listening to Adelita and her story of organizing in Yolo County, creating a whole new county plan and county climate commission, now serving on that commission. I don't know if she has aspirations for elective office herself, but she's going to be in a very, very strong position to at least understand what that involves. And, if she chooses to make an impact that way, I think should be very, very effective at it because she's been an outside advocate. So thanks for the opportunity to share a few examples. And I'm also very happy to speak to people offline, afterwards. Very easy to find and easy to communicate with. Thank you.
Thanks so much, David. That's really inspiring and good reminder that we're all on the same team. We're all working together here. So that's awesome. So finally, I'm going to welcome Mayor Catherine Blakespear, who's currently mayor of Encinitas, and actually the Fund Her board just voted to endorse her in her campaign for State Senate District 36. So welcome, Catherine.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. And I just want to recognize Fund Her for putting together this great panel of experts, subject matter experts in this topic, and really prioritizing this and elevating it to be talked about publicly. And then thank those of you who are participating and sticking around to hear the speakers. I've been very inspired by the speakers today, so thank you to those of you who spoke. So I've been the mayor for 5 years in the city of Encinitas and was on the city council for 2 years before that. And I was elected into a city that is very environmentally oriented. And I am also an environmental champion and talk about it. And there's a broad base of support for that in our city here. I think it's important to recognize that without question, climate change will have to be fought at the local level because there are a lot of small decisions that are made, and in the aggregate, they create our emissions. So when you look at the emissions sector by sector, what you see is that the largest sector is the transportation sector, which is actually the hardest to affect. And the reason for that, of course, is that people are very committed to their cars. And we also have a development pattern where we are not, as a state in general, we struggle a lot with densifying where we already have housing, and it's a lot easier to sprawl out into the backcountry, which creates, of course, development in fire hazard zones, but also creates mega commutes that put more pressure on our open spaces, and then also the amount of time people are spending in their car and that long commute time. So I think whenever we're talking about climate and really moving the needle on it, it's important to recognize that because we spend in my city a lot of time on other parts that are easier to accomplish, but also important. But we need to recognize that that transportation sector, which is a full 50% of emissions for many jurisdictions, is something that needs attention. So investing in transit, building more bike lanes, making it more comfortable for people to take options outside of the single occupancy vehicle. Those are all like just super important things to be remembering and advocating for. So in the city of Encinitas, some of the things that I'm most proud of are in the climate area. The area that we really leaned into is the electricity area. So getting us off of fossil fuels when it comes to how we power not just our cars, but also our homes and our buildings is really critical. So we moved to a community choice energy program, and which was a multi-year process to pair with other jurisdictions. And as one of the speakers said before, to have the default option be renewable. So you can opt out of that and stay with the investor-owned utility, which is like, you know, some larger percentage of dirty gas, or dirty energy source, which is gas and coal predominantly. But the default being clean and green and 100% renewable is really the key thing, because the vast majority of people will not change the default. So if you're ever in a position where you're having to make these types of decisions, you know, really being super clear about that, I think makes a huge difference, because the percentages are just so much bigger on that side. We also just passed the most ambitious building electrification ordinance in our San Diego County area. And there are cities in the Bay Area that have done this, but we haven't had it in Southern California as much. So what we did was we're requiring that all new homes and businesses are all electric. So the idea is that we're not putting in stranded infrastructure that will just prolong our dependence on gas. And there are luckily, the private market has actually filled in this way very successfully. So you can have electric water heaters and electric heating and things that people have used for gas. The cooktop, you know, there's customer preference, they call it consumer preference for gas cooktops, but that is rapidly changing. And in many ways, you know, that's not really a reason for us to continue to install this infrastructure that we are then dependent upon, especially for new construction. And the secret to that ordinance was that the exceptions need to be narrow. So if you have too many exceptions for restaurants and for accessory dwelling units and for buildings that ask for it to do an offset in some other way, you know, you end up with an ordinance that's not really doing all that much. So we've had great advocates in our city who have really have a detailed analysis in the climate action campaign as well that say this is what we recommend. And so being connected to those advocates, as was just talked about by the previous speaker, is really, I think, has been really useful for me. So the advocacy community makes a huge difference when they know what they're talking about, because a lot of elected officials like me and like most people do not come to the role with a deep subject matter expertise in something like this. Occasionally you might have one, but for the most part, you know, when other people are making a credible case from the same values that you start from, you see like, oh, we can do this. So we also were one of the early ones to ban plastic bags. We've also banned styrofoam. So takeout containers at restaurants do not need to be styrofoam. And we're talking about balloons. So balloons end up in the ocean and everywhere, and so there's been a whole change also of how the city manages our own events. Like we don't give away single-use plastics. We've moved to now have a composting program. Many of these things are all very detailed in their operation, but it does make a big difference. So I know we're right here at 5, so I'll conclude my remarks just by saying thank you for caring about this, and to return to the reality that it does come down to all of our individual decisions. It was mentioned at the beginning, eating less meat and being conscious of your own choices about waste. All of those things really matter. And what you plant in your front yard, all that matters. So thank you for what you're doing. And I think that we will be able to actually maybe cool the planet, but at least stabilize the climate if we all act together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. That was amazing. Yeah, I recognize that, we are right at time. It's 5 p.m. So I'm just going to kind of wrap quickly. I think we can keep the conversation going. I'll send a follow-up email. I'll include the information that I'd sent beforehand. I'll include the wonderful presentation from Sabrina and Savina. We've had all of our presenters generously offer their contact info, so I'll provide that as well. In the spirit of continuing the conversation, we did just want to poll you all really quickly on whether you might be interested in a follow-up meeting in early 2022. And so that would kind of keep us all accountable to take action. Feel free, I've just launched a poll. It should be right on your desktop. I'll just keep it up for about 15-20 seconds. We just really want to help you all take action. If you feel like that wouldn't be useful, that's totally fine. But yeah, so at this point, I'm going to quickly turn it over to our founder, Val, to wrap us up for the night.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Meryl. I just want to give a huge thanks to all of our speakers once again for joining us, for leading on this issue, for inspiring us to help us know that this change is possible, and sharing some ways that we can do that together. I hope that all of you took away from this. I want to thank you all for joining, that you took away some useful information, that you're already kind of, hopefully synapses are firing and you're developing your own climate action plan and thinking about where you want to kind of dig in your own community and who you want to be on your team, and maybe some possible allies who can help you implement that change. I just wanted to share with you all also, this is our climate. Of course, we have 4 cornerstones: women's equality, reproductive freedom, climate, which is what we're focused on today. And I wanted to invite you all to our social justice event, which is happening on November 8th. I'm just going to put the link right in the chat. But we are going to have, is anybody here as excited as I am about flipping some of these states next cycle? Because that is definitely on the docket. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is featuring 2 women running for governor in 2 of these states, Iowa and Arizona. We'll have Katie Hobbs with us, who is Arizona Secretary of State. We'll have Deidre DeGier with us, who is running for governor of Iowa, would be the nation's first Black woman governor. And of course, we'll also have the incredible California Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber. And so many of you already know her, I'm sure, from the incredible work she's done in our California legislature. But would love to have you all join us and spread the word if you know of others who might be interested. It's going to be a really exciting conversation focused on voting rights and police reform, 2 key social justice issues. So thank you all again, and looking forward to seeing you hopefully in 2022 for a follow-up on this. Thanks so much. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.